Hello, good now to you, those of you who may be watching whenever and however, whoever you are. My name is Ryan Erickson. This space is Riffing with Ryan. And today on this show, we're going to do another episode in the series that we're calling This is an Agile Coach. Because for a while, as you may know, we've been talking about this whole deal. No such thing as an Agile coach. Well, okay, no such thing as an Agile coach. Maybe some folks don't agree with that. So those Agile coaches that I know I've asked to kind of come in and say, hey, this is what I think it is, and this is what I think it is, so we can have that conversation going into the future. And today, my guest is someone who I don't know terribly well, but who was highly recommended to me by a friend of mine to get to know. And I really enjoyed talking with IainMcKenna, who I'm going to bring on the stage right now. Hello,
Hi.
Ian.
Hi.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, regale those who may be watching with a tale of who you are, what you do in a minute or two.
Okay, so I'm IainMcKenna. I'm based in the UK. I've been involved in agile software development and agile product delivery since before the days of agile. Started in the mid-1980s. So I'm a dinosaur. I've been around a bit. Now I focus my efforts on helping other people to gain a deep understanding of what it actually takes to deliver any type of product iteratively and incrementally and quickly. So that's me.
Sounds great. Well, I think that leads us into the question of the day. So, Ian, what is an Agile coach?
The $64,000 question. So I probably should say that I'm in the camp of there is no such thing as an agile coach. But maybe for a different reason to other people. And part of that is, for me, there is no such thing as agile. Agile isn't a noun. It shouldn't be a noun. That's a mutilation of the English language. And if we go back to the early days of this, I love the way you described it to me earlier, Ryan, as the community that isn't a community. A lot of people would say it probably really crystallized around 2001 with the publication of the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. So there is such a thing as agile software development, and there has been since before the manifesto. But there's no such thing as agile. So we could have people coaching people in agile software development. There is agile product management, there's agile product development, there's agile product delivery. These are just ways. Agile is just a describer of a set of behaviors that are used when doing some work in a particular domain. So for anyone to coach effectively, to me, they actually need to have an understanding of the domain of the work that the work is being done in. So if we're going to coach people in agile software development, then as coaches, we need to understand agile software development. If we're going to coach people in product management, then we need to have domain knowledge of product management so that we can coach effectively. So there's lots of different branches where coaching could be a useful strategy or tactic to use. But it's certainly not the only one. And over the years, we've had this sort of proliferation of people calling themselves agile coaches who, quite frankly, have no domain knowledge of the domain that the work is being done in, that they are trying to coach people. People seeing this as some sort of easy way to make money because there was an insatiable demand for agile coaches. And there's been a long-running joke about how do you become an agile coach. Log into your LinkedIn profile, edit your profile, change your title to say agile coach, and bang, there you are, you're an agile coach. Without that domain knowledge, it's very hard to be effective. And only using coaching even as your default stance, is not helpful when people don't understand these ways of working. People need to be taught, they need to learn. They're not going to do that through the default coaching approach of asking powerful questions. If I asked somebody who's learned to write software in a very ineffective and inefficient way, and I started asking them powerful questions about how they could write software in a better way, they wouldn't get it. They wouldn't know because they don't know the practices and the techniques. They have to learn those things first. And yeah, I get this. Agile coaches do more than just coach. But without domain knowledge, they cannot teach effectively. And I actually spend a lot of my time now undoing the work of the harm done by some of these agile coaches. So, yeah, if you're going to coach somebody, it's like you need to have knowledge about the domain that you are coaching in. And you need to be able to do other things as well as coach. You need to be able to teach, you need to be able to mentor, you need to be able to guide. Yeah, it's not always about helping people find their own answers. How's that?
I think that's great. I thank you for putting that out there in the space, in the sphere. So at this point, let's go into, again, a little deeper. The work domain's important, right? So I mean that's the theme. I think I abhor the whole A versus B. I'm right, you are wrong. I mean it's more complicated than that, and that's, I think, what you say, and that's what all the folks have been saying in all of these discussions. And also there's this sense of frustration. Maybe this is with where you are, and Marcelo and the folks, like that. There are folks here who come in who, how dare you come in here and try and help a software team when you don't know about software? And
well, I actually had somebody attend one of my advanced courses recently, and he said to me, because one of the modules is about coaching, and he said to me, please do not talk about coaching. I have had so many bad experiences with agile coaches.
And okay, can you see what did he describe what those experiences were?
Basically, it was he explained one situation where somebody came in as an agile coach into the organization that he was working in, and one of the first things that they'd done was to send everybody a questionnaire to fill in. Now, this is not just to the people in the teams. This was to the senior managers, the executive, everyone. A questionnaire that took them roughly 3 hours each to fill in. And was asking questions about their personal lives. What was the biggest problem they faced in their personal life?
Oh, gosh.
You can imagine.
Read the room, man. What kind? So, do you know anything? What kind of company was that? What was one man people person?
It was a reasonably large company, several hundred employees.
So how, boy, several hundred people times 3 hours, and each. Ooh, boy, that's an ask. Okay. So
I
that
will
does
say that I don't think, from what he said, I don't think that agile coach lasted very long.
well. That I think that comes into another point that was brought in by Dan Moody. And he's kind of coming at this from a different perspective, holistic. Everyone's got a different perspective. Okay, I get that, but this is the arrogance of many just people in general, but the arrogance of agile coaches. He said there was something that happened when it was Agile 2023 or 2022. There's a word cloud where people were asked to describe agile coaches, and the word that was right in the middle, the biggest piece of it, was arrogant. Right. So that hubris of saying, "Oh, I am a coach. I've done 2 weeks, 2 months, of training. So in the ICF mode of asking powerful questions, I have the right and I have the mandate to say, spend this amount of your life because trust me." That's kind of arrogance. Does that just?
It's. I guess these people get their qualifications from the Dunning-Kruger Institute of the ICF. Unfortunately, Dunning-Kruger is alive and well.
Yeah.
Because another thing for me is I actually don't think you can coach just with domain knowledge as well. I think you need to have expertise.
So how what's the distinction in that for you?
Well, let's just say I have encountered some agile coaches who have spent 6 or 12 months working on a team that thought it was using Scrum but wasn't. They've never actually delivered anything. They've all been fired, and then these people changed their titles to become agile coaches because it was an easy way to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
They've not actually demonstrated any real ability to deliver a product. They've not demonstrated any real solid ability in software engineering. They've not demonstrated any clear ability in product management. But they can still call themselves an agile coach, and they'll claim domain knowledge and expertise, often way beyond what they actually have.
Why do you think that is?
Just
a conjecture. I'm not saying you're casting aspersions on anyone, but
because they can get away with it, because in the past there has been this insatiable demand for agile coaches. I remember one of the previous heads of the Scrum Alliance saying to me once that in the US alone, there were something like 5,000 vacancies live online for agile coaches. This is going back a few years, so obviously the market's changed a lot since then.
That's what I wanted to get into. So that was so there's the glut and there's the rush to the gold rush, right? Maybe the agile gold rush.
If you think about it, we went through exactly the same within software engineering, where there were not enough trained, skilled software engineers to meet the demand of the market. The answer in that case, or one answer that was employed in that case, was to hive off bits of software engineering that required lower skill, like testing and business analysis and things like that, and create separate roles for these things, which negated the complexity of software engineering in that a lot of people talk about software engineering as knowledge work, but it's actually knowledge creating work as well. As we do it, we are creating new knowledge for ourselves, the people doing it. We're creating a better understanding of the problem that we're trying to solve. We're learning how to solve the problem. And this is why technical practices like refactoring are so important, because when we initially write a piece of code and get it working, we've just learned how to solve a problem. We haven't solved it in the optimum way. So by getting that understanding of how to solve the problem, we can invariably see a better way to solve it immediately. And we should go back and do that, because Otherwise, we leave behind this horrible thing called technical debt, which, again, people talk about but don't really seem to understand what it is. And it's a deviation of our implementation of our solution from our understanding of the problem.
It's. I think there's a word for that too. Is cruft. I think we've talked about that too. That kind of that detritus from what the work has been done. You just kind of leave. I don't care about that stuff.
So So the problem in software engineering was solved by hiving off different parts of the knowledge creation to different people, which actually means that there's always some knowledge that gets lost because it's not considered significant enough to transfer, which increases our risk that we do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Coupled with the ambiguity of language. Unfortunately, there's not really such a possible solution when it comes to helping teams become more effective at delivering high-quality working software. So agile coaching couldn't be sort of split up into different things, because then you'd need a software development coach, you'd need a business analysis coach, you'd need a testing coach. Oh no, we can't afford all that. Let's just hire one person who calls themselves an agile coach.
Well, this is where the sports analogy kind of falls, and it may fall a bit different in American football, right? So you have the head coach, the offensive and defensive coordinators. You have position coaches for every group of positions, every 3 or 4 or 5, and all that kind of stuff. But on a software development team of 10, you can't have 10 different coaches because you've got administrative bloat there.
You have one coach who understands software development.
and that's also, so that's, it comes down to some of those things. You talked about the creative piece, and because I come from the musical background, so it's about the cross-functional team is, we each have our different instruments, but we understand the music in similar ways, right? And this is, I think you talked about the splitting of BAs and testers and all that kind of stuff. That leads to, in my mind, the way it's described, and I've seen it, I've felt it, that there's this lack of respect between developers and BAs and testers. Testers don't like these folks, and then you put folks offshore and onshore, and I don't respect those guys in the Philippines, or those ladies, gentlemen, and people in Croatia, whatever but so all this disrespect, it comes from splitting out, that if we bring those things together, that we become a we because we respect each other, and you're an excellent tester because you have learned how to solve testing problems and write test cases that maybe I, as a developer, wouldn't think, or the business analysts would not have gotten from the conversation they had. So coming together and having that mutual respect is important, right? And so but then, okay, so what's a coach's role in that? And if you have that team, I'm going a couple different ways, but you talked about knowledge creation. Creation is different than that kind of production thing.
So I want to riff a bit on your theme about music, because I come from a musical background as well. I think actually a lot of people in the software world come from musical backgrounds, because there's a lot of similarities there with patterns and pattern recognition and changing patterns, coming up with new patterns. Music to your ears,
listen, totally. So please do.
The thing is, one thing, lack of respect, is because these bits of software development were hived off because they were viewed to be lower skilled. Not everybody has that same understanding of the music. Testers don't have the same understanding necessarily as the people writing the code. The architecture, BAs often don't understand these things either. So, as well as segregating the knowledge creation and introducing a problem with losing knowledge, we've also created a situation where there is not the same understanding of the music. You watch a jazz quartet playing. They are constantly communicating with each other whilst they're playing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Nobody's on their own doing their own thing.
It can't be.
You can't be now. Even if somebody's playing a solo, there's still communication going on.
Yeah, and if no one else, right, and this is great because you got the drummer playing, he's playing a bit. Everyone's got to be paying attention because you got to come in and like, and then everybody goes or yes,
You
it's
don't
about
have that in a software team.
it's
Not
listening.
when there are discrete roles that are siloed as part of the knowledge creation process. We lose that communication.
Yeah,
we lose that understanding.
and so this comes down to the squishy part of so it's a multivariate problem. I think Marcelo talks about this too, and that is not only is there a wide asynchrony in the expertise levels and the domain knowledge levels, so that's a problem to solve. Okay, so that's a teaching problem. The knowledge problem is not necessarily that hard if you acknowledge it. So here's some knowledge you can study, gain, practice, and then so now you've learned how to play your instrument, right? So I know the notes, right? And yet then you get these folks in the room, get a bunch of relatively similarly skilled folks in the room. There's still that we've got this gray matter up here, and we got this, and we got this, and we all have a life experience. Then so that becomes a place where we need, if we're having a collaboration problem,
that's where the coach comes in.
Bingo, right? And that's when is this person kind of not in sync? Are they there? Is that an individual problem? Is that a duet problem? Those two people? Is that 3? Is that 4? Is that some other thing? But that, to me, that's the job that someone they're an observer, they're a listener, they're listening like nobody else's business and observing and doing that hard work.
But they have to understand what they're hearing.
Exactly.
And that's where the domain knowledge becomes critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not having somebody somebody who doesn't understand music trying to conduct an orchestra. What are they going to do?
Yeah. Just stand up there and wave their arms.
And stand there and wave their arms and ask powerful questions. Sorry.
And then the players in the orchestra are like, who is this bozo up there?
Exactly.
And then they'll put on a face, if they're hired to be if they're a highly paid bozo, you have to put on the face and say, oh, thanks, bozo. And then you go back in the room when you're taking a smoke break to just, oh God, what an idiot, loser.
Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. So we could go quite a bit longer, I think, on this topic. So in this, and I have to go into the music thing with you at some point, but we can maybe do that when we pop out into the green room. So on the third part of this little deal, I'm exploring this idea of dangerous questions, right? What's a kind of question that that you really can't answer in public for fear of reputational damage and risk and hurting somebody's feelings who you don't know, but you really have a curiosity about this issue. So I would consider that a dangerous conversation, right? So I'm exploring ways to have people come together and have those kind of conversations in the hope that, togetherness and kind of this deep bonding of, hey, we're in this together, that can happen. So on that note, within this community that is not a community, what is the dangerous conversation that you want to see happen? I'll let you riff on that.
Ooh. Now you throw me in the deep end there.
Sorry.
Is this... I think I need a little bit more context. So is this a question for asking an agile coach, or it's generally to ask anybody in this
I would keep
it's a community.
Yeah, let's keep, because there's no, or I say that because there's no boundaries, there's no status of membership. Like if you're a citizen of an apartment complex, you got to pay the rent, you got to live here. This is all stuff, or a city, or a country, or the PMI, the community of, so all this stuff. That's what I say, and there's a sense of communitas. So because this is the subject matter area, agile software development, that what we call, I would say, yeah, what is the dangerous conversation within this sphere that started, when the name that has been named that shall not be named, that came about in 2001 from Snowbird. What's the conversation that you want to have happen that feels dangerous with some reputational risk? Does that help with the context?
Yeah. My first thought is probably, when was the last time you got fired and why? Or who did you really piss off by doing what you believed was the right thing? And what was the outcome?
I like it. So that section, I'm probably going to have a segment of those all together, because I'm going to ask that question. We'll see what happens with that.
The reason I say that is because I often say to trainee Scrum Masters that if you're not willing to be fired, you're not ready to be a Scrum Master.
Yeah.
And I said that once in a Scrum Master meetup in South Africa, in Cape Town. Somebody that I know rather well there tweeted it, and it caused an absolute shitstorm on Twitter. And there was one guy in particular that tweeted a reply to her, having clearly looked up my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And his response was, "There speaks somebody from a position of privilege."
Of course.
Now, my first thought was, hey, you don't know me, you don't know my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then define privilege, right? So what kind of privilege?
I am in a position of privilege in many ways. I'm a CST. I'm financially independent. I don't actually need to work right now, which puts me in a very fortunate position compared to a hell of a lot of people these days. I'm a white middle-aged man. Of course, I'm privileged. But my response to him was, it's probably not the privilege you expect. It's the privilege of having been fired 6 times for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And as an example of one of the right things, I was working for a retailer. We had put in a credit card authorization system that was fault tolerant, load balanced, completely resilient. 2 different sites mirroring each other, each capable of taking the full load for the business. Diverse network routing into each site. So the whole thing was set up to be completely resilient.
Yeah.
And the illustrious IT director told me that it had to be moved to run on the company's mainframe. A platform that was not actually supported by the vendor. He told me I had to go and tell the vendor to port their software to run on the mainframe.
So what this was like a Unix platform or
so we were running it on Unix, and he wanted to run it on IBM OS 390.
Just willy-nilly.
Yeah. But not only that, the company's mainframe had actually been down 6 weeks before that. It'd been down for 3 weeks because of a storage problem that IBM couldn't diagnose. Now, you imagine 85% of the time of the store, of both the store and mail order business, was paid for by credit card.
Oh, man.
Imagine being down for 3 weeks and not being able to take a credit card payment.
And that's the platform you want to put your resiliency
onto? The director wanted to move it onto, and when I just told him I would not do it, that was one of the things that led to me being, well, they didn't technically fire me. I was made redundant.
Yeah. And this was a direct hire position at that point, one of the
Yeah,
one of the employable. That's what made you unemployable, right?
One of my last direct influence situations.
Oh man. Oh, so that other thing. I've heard this somewhere. But I know I heard it from James Copeland before about that. If you're not willing to be fired, you're not going to be a good Scrum Master, because that's this idea of talking truth to power. I mean,
you actually think how much information gets filtered to execs because people don't want to give them bad news.
Yeah.
The same company, actually, I had a really good relationship with the chief exec. He asked me to develop a new system for the stores for a particular type of sale, which was a very heavily manual process and a complicated process. So the store staff sort of shied away from promoting that line of products. Asked me if we could put a system in to make it easier. And he gave me a list of stakeholders to engage with for this. And 6 weeks into the project, I went to him and said, we need to stop this. It's not going to deliver. The stakeholders don't know what the hell they're talking about. And he said, well, we need it. This is potentially a very lucrative line of business for us. What do you suggest? I said, well, we need to restart them, but with the right people involved. And he said, well, who are the right people? I said, we need real end users. We need store staff. We need head office staff who are dealing with the suppliers. We need to actually get the people on the ground doing the work involved in creating the solution. What a radical thought.
I could blow my mind. How often has this been this? Oh my gosh, this like the light bulb comes on. Maybe we should ask them.
The CEO turns around to me and says, okay, do it. Could we still have it on the original date? And I said, well, I don't know. We've spent 6 weeks getting this far. And I didn't know 6 weeks ago if you could have it on that date or not. That was just a date that Microsoft Project told me might be possible.
Yeah.
It wasn't a commitment. It wasn't a guarantee. Now, that same CEO actually turned around to me a few months later as I was leaving the organization. He said to me that I was the first project manager who he'd ever met that had suggested stopping the project.
Wow. And did he say that to you with a sense of admiration or?
No, he was. People
like to be told the truth.
Yes.
Wouldn't you think so?
But people very often feel that if they tell the truth to me, I mean, I had a client years ago now. They used to have this Monday afternoon project review meeting with the vice presidents in charge of the sort of like customer-facing business. Normally there'd be about 20 projects on the go, 20, 30 projects on the go. So 5 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, great time to have a meeting. We used to have to go and have this project review.
At least it wasn't Friday.
Yeah. And of course, during the previous week, something would have gone wrong on one of the projects. And this VP would sit there and she'd say, look, I'm not going to shout at you. I'm not going to scream at you. There's no punishment here. We need to understand what happened so that the other projects can learn from it and try and avoid the same thing happening. Whichever of the project managers it was at that point would heave a sigh of relief. Okay, I'm not going to get shouted at. And they would open up and they'd spill their guts. And then the vice president would give them an absolute bollocking. And one day, one of them said something to me about, you're always very quiet in these meetings. I said, yeah, because I learned after the first one.
Yeah.
She says she's not going to shout at you, and then she shouts at you, and you guys have been doing this for years, and you have not learned yet.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, people. And if you dig into that person needs an executive coach.
The thing is, if you take that quality of coaching,
high performance coach, right?
Yeah, high performance coaching. You look at Andy Murray as a tennis player. Who did he have as his coach? Ivan Lendl. Ivan Lendl. an expert tennis player, a championship winner. He didn't just go and hire somebody who played tennis at the local tennis club for 6 weeks.
Yeah, we hire someone who knows, who has been where he wants to go, right?
Yeah.
Is that so much of a shibboleth, to not be able to say that?
But then the thing is, you have to pay them. And this is the other thing. If you actually look at the market as it was for agile coaches and for scrum masters, they were some of the lowest paid positions in a lot of cases. Now, that says to me two things. One, that organizations aren't actually serious about wanting coaching, because you wouldn't just go and hire some, as I say, Murray wouldn't hire somebody who'd been playing tennis for 6 weeks at their local club to coach them. He wants somebody who's been there, who knows what it takes, who can help him get there and stay there.
Yeah. Not only he's hiring someone for a purpose, right?
Yeah. But then you got to pay them what they want, and it's like, I'll actually never forget one of the hardest interviews I had for a contract. It was a panel interview. I actually found out later that the internal candidate for the same position was on the panel for my interview.
Of course. Yeah.
But one of the guys from the organization, he was the most senior from actually worked for the client's organization. At the end of the interview, he said to me, "Are there any questions you want to ask us?" And I said, "No, not really. I think we've covered everything." And he said, "Oh, that really surprises me." Now, my first thought was, shit, what should I have asked him that I haven't told him? And then my second thought was, how the hell do I get out of this now? So I just thought, okay, just braised it out. And I looked at him and said, okay, so what do you think I should have asked you that I haven't asked you?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I thought you would have asked what sort of support you would get from senior management, given the profile of this project, what's at stake, what's involved. I would have thought you'd be really keen to know what support you would get from us. I thought about it. I thought, that's actually a really good question.
It is. That's an excellent question.
Now, how the hell do I get out of this? And I just looked at him and said, I don't need to ask you that question. And that just threw him completely off guard. Oh? Why? I said, well, for one thing, the person who introduced me explained the sort of critical nature of this project, how important it was, what was at stake, what the ramifications were with the parent company if it failed. So I already know about the criticality of the project. And the reason I don't need to ask you that question is because you're talking to me about it. You could have gone to JobServe and found some £350 a day wanker who didn't know what the hell they were doing and hired them. But you're talking to me, who's probably one of the most expensive people you're going to come across. And you and I both know that I can walk away from this at any time. So if I don't get the support from you, I'm out the door.
Yeah. You're not needy.
It was only after I left that organization that my line manager, he was another contractor, but he was part of the panel. And we went over dinner and he turned around to me and said, he said, you really you pulled it out the hat with that answer. He says, well, until then, everyone was thinking, it was just a wanker in a shiny suit. Saying, why should we look at hiring this guy? He said, but when you came up with that answer, when you left, he looked at me and said, so what do you think? And I just looked at him and said, he'll do the job.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, I'm gonna let's stop the recording for a moment. I'll say a blah 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 to those folks who may. I think I'm gonna stream this later today because I think this has been really fun. So I'll do my blah blah and then we'll head out. Hey, blah 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 blah. This has been a great talk with Ian. I love this. I got to know him a little better. The music thing, woo! And so I'm so psyched to have another talk with Ian again for sure, and have more to come. So thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. We'll see you later.